Hello everyone, welcome to another video. So in this video we're going to be taking our information, what we learned from the previous tutorial, which was about Docker images, and we're going to be using it to upload to Supabase, uploading data. So what is Supabase? So Supabase is basically a Postgres development platform, and it allows you to do a bunch of things like authentication. You can have your own database online. It's kind of a replacement for a backend, and you have automatically online. It does all the documentation for you whenever you're creating routes. It's very useful for a lot of different use cases. So I think we can start off by creating a project. I already have mine, but we can start a new project just to use it for this project. So I'm just gonna do Docker tutorial and as a password, but that's the password that you're gonna have. You want to save this password somewhere. You have copy here. You want to save this password somewhere just in case. Now the next thing we're gonna do is create a new project, and so we're gonna wait for a little bit. You can save. Okay, so now we have this, and what we're going to have to do is we're going to have to create tables. We're going to have to do a bunch of things for this. We are going to get back to this in a moment, but we're now going to install a Docker image of Postgres, because that's what we're going to have to use to upload data onto our server. For this tutorial, we are going to be using data from Pokemon. So I got this from TCGDex API, and I filtered it down to a CSV file where you have the card name, the card image, and the card local ID. And we're going to be uploading this online. And the thing is, you could upload this on the online interface of Supabase, but the reason why you cannot do this bulk amount of data is because it doesn't allow it. I'm not sure exactly the amount it takes, but it cannot take like a bulk amount of data. So you have to do it through psql. So we're going to install our Docker image of Postgres, and to do so, we are going to do docker pull postgres. And here, this is very important. You do :17. So :17, whatever is after the colon is the version you want of Postgres. So to install, we're going to do command prompt docker pull postgres :17. So currently it's at 18.1, but we're doing 17. I've checked online that says that it suggests that you use the version below. When I was trying to do Postgres latest, it was giving me an error and it wasn't working. So I just used Postgres 17. That's the one we're going to be using for this tutorial. And then if you want to check, if once you've pressed enter and installed, you can check by doing docker image ls, and you can check that you've installed your image. Okay. So the next thing we're going to do, we are going to create a bind type of mount. And what is a bind? So it's a type of mount, and a mount is essentially has a bind and a volume. A volume is a type of external section that you can store data on Docker. So you have volumes, and you can then basically use it from the containers, and this is managed on the Docker side. And binds, although volumes is suggested by Docker to use, binds have one good thing, which is it allows you to bind a folder directory on your machine to the container that you just created, which means in this case, I want to upload my CSV file to my Postgres container, which then I can connect to the database on Supabase and upload the data inside the CSV directly to my server. And we're going to see how to do that. So it might seem a bit confusing, but I'm going to show you and you'll see what I mean. So I'm going to start off by doing docker run, and then I'm going to do docker mount, okay, and do type bind. So it's a type of mount, and the mount type is bind. Okay, the next thing we're going to do is we're going to do the source. So this is where we are going to place our files. So this is going to be our directory where we get the files from. I just noticed I got something extra here, right? So, and then the destination. So inside the Docker container, where do you want the files to show up? So root is usually the root of the container, and then data. And then, because just in case I would need to use this container more than once, because it's related to Postgres and I might want to do another project like I'm doing now, projects, and then I can say, I'm gonna name the same thing as I'm using, so projects, pokeTrade. So this is where the files are going to show on the container. So that's where you're going to be able to access them once we try and upload the data onto our Supabase database. So postgres-db-local, that's the name of the container that I want to create. That's what's going to show up on Docker, and that's what's going to be where you're going to use to connect to. So E. Now you're going to need your Postgres password, and this is for your sign in on your machine. So I'm going to put dogsarecool, and then you're going to do E. So you can choose something else, of course. Postgres user. So you're going to put your name. So I'm going to put community dev, and then E, and then Postgres DB. You can just say my database. You can name something you want. So the next thing is the port. So we're going to put port 5434. 5434. Always check your container section to make sure that your port isn't used. So in this case, it is used because this is the one that I have been using for my projects. But always make sure that there is no other port that's using it. So it doesn't come into conflict. And lastly, what is the Postgres version that you're using? This is also very important. I've had some issues at the beginning where I was putting latest here, and so what happens is you will download Postgres latest and it doesn't work. So you have to make sure that it matches. So once you press this, it's going to mount, it's going to create a container for you, which I already have right here. And this container is basically going to have a bind type of mount that will connect the directory that you have selected on your machine to your Docker. So in this case, what happens is I have to run the Docker, of course. So now that the Docker is running, I can go over to root, data, projects, pokeTrade. So this is a directory that I have created. And so here are files that I have uploaded already. So I went onto my directory, I put the files there. You have to make sure that the container is stopped, or if it's not, you can upload it. However, it won't show up here automatically unless you either stop and play it again and restart it again, or you restart it. So you play and you start the container. So you stop the container and play it, or you restart it. So you have that choice. Otherwise, the file is not going to show up. So what happens now, we have our CSV in our container, okay? So that means that in our Postgres container, that Postgres is what allows it to connect to our online Supabase database, right? We now have the file with the data that we need to upload. And so with that, we are going to the next stage, which is we are going to connect to our database. Docker. So we're going to do Docker. Exec it. We're going to need the name of our container. And then we're going to need our host now. So how are we going to get our host? So we write Postgres, which is the name of the database, and the host, we're going to get it. So we get the host by going into our project, go to connect. Right over here, we go to session puller, and down here in view parameters, we are going to get our host from here. Okay. And right there. And then the next thing is our port, which is going to be 5432, which is the default Postgres port. And then we're going to need our username, which is also here. So we're going to copy that. And we are going to paste. So to get our password, we have to go over here to database. And then we have to go over here to settings. And we have here database password. So the password is already here. So just have to copy. Okay. And then we're going to paste in here. If by any chance you get this error for whatever reason, you can always go and just reset database password, generate a password, will generate the password automatically for you. So the new password is written here, and then you copy and you put the reset password. And what this does is basically, I suggest every time you get a new password, just store it somewhere, because it will be easier for you to then go and get it for your sign-ins. So getting back to that, so let's try to sign in. And we have now signed in. So as you can see, it now says psql. That means we are signing in our database. And now we can go and do what we need to do. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to create a table, which is going to host our information from the Pokemon database. So in this case, we're going to need a database with card name. We're going to need a database with card image and a card local ID. So what is a UID? It's a universal unique identification number. So every table that you have needs to have its own UID, which basically allows it to distinct itself and to find it amongst all the other tables in all the other instances of tables. I feel like this deserves its own tutorial, but it's just know that for now that every table will need that. So what we're going to do, we're going to create a table named card, and then we do that. So what happened is we haven't closed this. So as you can see here, there's the open parenthesis. So we are currently still creating the table. So the next thing we're going to do is card ID, and then UID default UID generate v4 unique, that's important, and not null. So what this is going to do, this is going to, every time you'll see that the moment that I insert a new card onto the server, it's going to create a table with its own unique identifier for that specific Pokemon. But you'll see as I create it. So that's that. And then the next thing I have to do is the card name. And you have to make sure, and this is very important, whatever CSV you're uploading from, you have to make sure that the name of the row matches the name that you have in the CSV, otherwise it's not going to work. Very important. Okay, so card name is going to be a text type. Okay. And then we're also going to do card image. So card image is a type of, it's just basically, as you can see, it's a string. It's a URL, but it's a string, so it's also text. And lastly, we're going to need our card local ID. It has numbers, however, it is also a string, so text. And now what we're going to do is we're going to close parentheses, and we have to make sure that we put semicolon, because a semicolon will have created your table. And so how do you check if the table has been created? So you go on here. So by pressing /DT, you can now see that we have a table right here, card, which is our table. But we have to do one more thing. So we are going to have to make sure that our table has row level security. This is something for later down the line, but nonetheless, we're going to do that now. Table, card, enable, row level security. So the last thing we're going to do is we are going to upload our files onto the table, right? And to do that, we're going to be doing copy card. And now you have to make sure that you write all of the names of the rows. So you have to write all the names of the rows that you're uploading to, right? So you have to make sure which is card name, card image, make sure that they are exactly the right name as the ones that you are uploading. So why are we doing this? And the reason is we have 3 values on this table. However, in our table that we have created online, as you can see, we can see it, we have 4 columns, okay? What we're going to write is copy card, and then we have to make sure that we have to write all the column names that we have, okay? And I have to match the name exactly as it is in our file that we're uploading. And the reason we have to write them all is because we also have a card ID, and we are not uploading a card ID as well. So we have to make sure that we just write the names of the columns that we are uploading, otherwise it's going to throw an error. And then we have to do from, and this is single quotes, and then you have to say the whole path to your file inside your Docker, which is basically root, data, projects, pokeTrade, and then lastly cards table.csv. You have to close it, and you have to make sure that you write semicolon at the end, otherwise it's not going to work. Local ID of relation card does not exist. And what does this happen? So I came to the solution. Essentially what was happening was, and it's important for you guys to know as well how to debug these kinds of things. So what happened is down here, if there is a value, and actually I remember because I've done this before, I've imported this before, there is one value which is oddish, which does not have a value, which throws the error and tells me that it cannot import. So what you have to do is you have to deal with format CSV null, and then defines it to null, and you put header. And that will allow you to get a copy 103, which means you copied all the data onto the server. And how can we check that? We can now see all the tables, and now we can see the table. So we can see the table is there. So now that we have imported, let's see table card. And now as you can see, we have the card name, card image, and card local ID. Our oddish is going to show up as a null down here somewhere. There you go. Oddish is null, and that's okay. It accepted it and uploaded it. And these are the UIDs that are generated every time you enter something. And there you go. We have our table uploaded. And so through here, you saw that we were able to use Docker to actually upload things online, and you could, if you wanted, install it on your PC. But the good thing with this is that you can easily install a container with Postgres 17, a container with Postgres 13. So by installing different images and creating containers for those versions, it's easier than you having to install on your machine, then uninstalling, installing it back again. It's much more dynamic. It's much easier for you to use these things. So I hope you guys enjoyed this tutorial. I will be coming back with some more. If you do have suggestions, or if you've seen things that you didn't understand, or you'd like them to be better explained, I'm happy to make more videos about it. Just let me know, okay? Thank you so much, and have a good time.